The cameras flashed, the crowd froze, and just like that, Hollywood had a new obsession.
I mean, it is just wild how fast a single announcement can completely stop the entire entertainment world in its tracks.
It really is. Welcome to Starscope Report. Join us as we uncover Hollywood drama, music industry shakeups, and viral influencer scandals. From red carpet surprises to social media controversies, we dive deep into the stories behind the fame.
And today we are doing a massive deep dive into a story that honestly rewrites the entire celebrity playbook. We're pulling from a huge stack of sources today.
Yeah, we've got everything from recent entertainment profiles to real estate data and even demographic research, because Cameron Diaz just announced baby number 3 and Hollywood is absolutely stunned.
Stunned is honestly an understatement. We are unpacking how a global icon deliberately walked away, completely redesigned her life, and forced the industry to play by her rules.
Exactly. Usually a celebrity baby announcement operates like a highly coordinated corporate merger.
Well, 100%. It's a machine.
Yeah, right. Every single personal milestone is treated as a monetization opportunity. An engagement means a jewelry sponsorship. A wedding gets you an exclusive photo spread. And a baby.
A baby is an entirely new demographic to capture. You get meticulously lit photo shoots, multi-page interviews dropping at exactly 9 a.m., and PR teams just working around the clock.
It is a well-oiled, highly predictable machine. The visibility isn't a byproduct, it's the whole point. It keeps the celebrity relevant.
But then you look at Cameron Diaz.
Mm.
For 2 decades, she was at the absolute center of that machine, the
Yeah.
highest paid actress in Hollywood.
Navigating the most frantic red carpets on Earth. And then at the absolute peak of her leverage, she didn't just take a vacation. She looked at that massive machine and she unplugged it.
Which brings us to May 4th, 2026, a quiet little post.
Yeah. Cameron Diaz, at age 53, and her husband, 47-year-old Good Charlotte musician Benji Madden, welcomed their 3rd child.
And the mechanics of how they shared this news. It tells you everything you need to know about her entire strategy over the last decade.
Because there was no glossy magazine cover.
None. Zero. There was no dramatic red carpet reveal. It was just a simple Instagram post. It featured a drawn character card with an illustration of a pirate ship, a potted plant, and a cardinal.
And the caption simply stated they were happy and blessed to announce the birth of their son, signed, the Madden family.
The sheer intentionality behind that quiet update is just striking to me. It was a whisper in an industry that literally demands shouting.
It really was. And the name they chose for their newborn son, Nautas, it acts almost as a skeleton key for understanding her mindset right now.
Well, yeah, let's talk about the name because they shared the specific origin of it, right?
Yeah, they noted it's derived from the Latin root nauta. It translates to sailor, navigator, or voyager. But the specific definition they highlighted was one who embarks on a journey and fears not the unknown.
Oh, wow. I mean, that feels less like a name and more like a personal manifesto.
Doesn't it? It functions exactly like a mission statement.
Nautas is such a brilliant metaphor for Diaz's own psychological journey. To be a navigator, you have to be willing to lose sight of the shore.
And she stepped out of the most visible, highly scrutinized industry on Earth to navigate into a completely unscripted, quiet life.
And that's not even the wildest part of how she's managing this new life. But we'll get to that shocking twist in just a minute.
First, let's look at the family she's building in that quiet space. Nautas joins 2 older siblings, all of whom were born via surrogate.
Right, you have their first daughter, Raddix Chloe Wildflower Madden, who arrived right at the end of 2019.
She's 6 years old now, and the sources mention she's quite the music lover.
Yeah, deeply into Taylor Swift and Paramore, which makes total sense given Benji Madden's background in the music industry.
Totally. Then there's their second son, Cardinal Madden, who was born in March 2024 and is now 2.
But here's the thing that really gets me. Despite having 3 children growing up in the digital age, we do not have a single picture of their faces.
Not one. The couple has been fiercely, uncompromisingly protective of their children's privacy. They flat out refuse to share photos of the kids online.
In an era where even regular non-celebrities treat their children's milestones as content, that level of discipline is incredibly rare.
It really forces you to think about your own digital footprint. If you're listening to this, consider how much of your personal life you broadcast online just out of habit.
We live in an influencer culture where a toddler's first steps are instantly optimized for likes.
But Diaz and Madden, They are operating their family like a highly classified top-secret program. You only know what they want you to know, exactly when they decide to let you know it.
For someone whose literal job was to be looked at, choosing to make your family unlookable is just a radical act of defiance.
But you cannot achieve that level of invisibility through willpower alone. You have to engineer the right environment.
Absolutely. The physical geography of central Los Angeles simply does not allow for a quiet life. The infrastructure there is built to support the paparazzi ecosystem.
Exactly. Beverly Hills, West Hollywood, these places are essentially the campus of the entertainment industry. The valet stands, the restaurants.
They're all choke points, designed for celebrities to be seen and photographed.
So the real estate decisions Diaz and Madden made weren't just financial investments, they were psychological necessities.
If we look at their property history, the shift is super clear. For a long time, their Los Angeles base was a sprawling 9,200 square foot custom Beverly Hills farmhouse.
They purchased it in 2020 for $14.7 million.
And it is stunning, but it's still Beverly Hills. You step out of your gate and you are immediately on the industry grid.
Which is exactly why they started trying to offload it. They listed the property in July 2024 for $17.8 million.
When it didn't move, they dropped the asking price to $16.5 million in May 2025.
Eventually, they just pulled it off the market entirely. They still own it, and it likely serves as a functional LA home base for when they absolutely have to take a meeting.
But it's no longer their primary sanctuary.
No, the true sanctuary is located a couple hours north. In 2022, they purchased a 10,800 square foot mansion in Montecito for $12.7 million.
Today, that property is valued at roughly $15 million. It sits on 2 lush acres, ocean and mountain views. It's gorgeous.
But more importantly than the views, it offers geographical isolation. Montecito functions almost like an acoustic dampener for fame.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. It physically removes the infrastructure that feeds the celebrity machine.
You get the incredible climate of Southern California, but the layout, the winding, narrow roads, the massive property setbacks, the private security.
It creates an actual fortress. You cannot accidentally run into a photographer in Montecito.
And that physical insulation was the prerequisite for the psychological shift Diaz was trying to achieve.
The puzzle pieces really snap together when you look at her comments from the Fortune Most Powerful Women Summit in 2024.
Yeah, she pointed out that she hadn't made a movie since the Annie remake back in 2014, but she officially stepped away in 2018.
And she told the audience she had to do it to reclaim my own life.
Reclaim. That is such a loaded word. It implies that her life wasn't entirely hers to begin with.
It suggests she had surrendered ownership of her own time, her schedule, and her identity to the Hollywood machine.
And if you're loving these Hollywood twists and deep dives into the real mechanics of fame, make sure you're subscribed. We've got even crazier stories ahead.
Definitely hit subscribe. Because this deprogramming from Hollywood's default definition of success is fascinating. Hollywood tells you that success is ubiquitous visibility.
Being on every billboard, getting the highest quote.
Right, and she looked at that paradigm and decided that success for her was a 2-acre bubble in Montecito with her family.
Think about your own environment for a second. How much of your physical space or your schedule is dictated by your job versus your actual peace of mind?
She had achieved the ultimate prize, being an A-list movie star, and realized the prize was actually a cage. So she built a new environment where she could be the architect of her own time.
Reclaiming that time allowed her to focus entirely on her next phase, building a family. But she did it on a timeline that completely defies societal expectations.
This is where her story intersects with much broader cultural trends. Walking away wasn't just about escaping career burnout.
No, it was fundamentally about shifting her priorities to motherhood at a non-traditional age. Having your first child at 47, your second at 51, and your third at 53.
That completely rewrites the societal script. Society programs this relentless ambient ticking clock into women.
The expectation is so rigidly defined. Have your career figured out by 25, be married by 30, have your kids by 35.
If you're listening to this in your 20s or 30s, you're probably intimately familiar with that pressure.
Diaz has been wonderfully candid about opting out of that expected timeline. In an interview on Naomi Campbell's No Filter YouTube series, she reflected on the stark difference between becoming a mother in your 20s versus doing it in your late 40s and 50s.
She said, when you're my age and you decide to do it, it's a real choice. You really have to work hard for it.
She even joked that the only pressure she feels now is that she has to live to be 107 just to be there for them.
I love that. And she brought up a similar sentiment in her BBC Radio 2 interview with Michelle Visage.
Right, she openly acknowledged the reality of being 20 years older than the other moms at the playground.
But rather than viewing it as a deficit, she embraced it. She said her main focus is simply feeling vital for her child.
What's fascinating when we look at all these sources is that we aren't prescribing one correct timeline. We are looking impartially at the data of how non-traditional timelines are reshaping modern families.
And Karen Diaz is actually the highly visible tip of a massive demographic iceberg. The data backs this up in a very striking way.
Let's look at the statistics from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention that were included in our research. The age of first-time mothers shifted dramatically between 2016 and 2023.
I was looking at those exact numbers, and the steepness of the curve is genuinely surprising. Births to mothers under 25 have absolutely plummeted.
There was a 26% drop in births for women under 20 and a 9% decline for those aged 20 to 24.
And while those numbers are falling, the percentage of first births for older mothers is just surging.
We saw a 12.6% increase for mothers aged 30 to 34.
And for mothers 35 and older, there was a massive 25% increase in just that 7-year window.
The average age of first-time mothers in the United States is steadily pushing toward 30 and beyond.
But hold on, let's unpack the mechanics of this shift. We talk a lot about the luxury of waiting, the freedom of removing the pressure of building a career before having kids.
Diaz had already won Hollywood. She doesn't feel like she's missing out on a movie role to stay home.
Right. But doesn't waiting until your late 40s or 50s just swap one pressure cooker for another?
That is the big question. You're essentially trading early life career and financial anxiety for later life biological and longevity anxiety.
It is an undeniable trade-off. In your 20s, the pressure is heavily economic and professional.
Yeah.
Can I afford a child? Will stepping away derail my earning potential?
In your 40s or 50s, the financial resources might be abundant, but the physical reality of biology and time becomes the new constraint.
But what the CDC data suggests is that more women are finding the financial and emotional stability of their 30s and 40s to be a safer foundation to build upon, despite the biological complexities.
So the timeline isn't a strict biological mandate. It's a social construct that we actually have the power to alter. Diaz built the unshakable foundation first.
She ensured she had the financial resources and the physical sanctuary in Montecito. That gave her the autonomy to give her family her undivided attention.
A source close to her told People magazine that for years, she was fully focused on her career, but she always wanted a family. Meeting Benji Madden changed the equation.
And becoming a mother brought her a new kind of happiness that she said was far more meaningful than she ever imagined.
Later in the deep dive, we'll talk about the surprising way she is actually returning to the spotlight, which nobody saw coming.
Because that autonomy she built, it's the ultimate prize. She established her family first, outside the Hollywood ecosystem, and it radically changed her relationship with her career.
She didn't permanently bolt the door on working, she just changed the locks.
Exactly. Now, she can engage with work purely as a choice, not as an obligation to maintain her relevance.
Which perfectly explains the mechanics of her recent comeback. Because she is the CEO of her own life, work functions almost like a hobby.
Or at least something she does strictly on her own terms. She started slowly by dipping her toes into the business world. In 2020, she launched Avaline, a clean wine brand.
That is a venture she can run from the comfort of her Montecito bubble without needing to spend 14 hours a day on a soundstage.
But eventually, the acting bug did return. The circumstances just had to be perfect.
After an 11-year hiatus, it was her longtime friend Jamie Foxx who lured her back to the screen.
He convinced her to join the Netflix action comedy, appropriately titled Back in Action, which released in early 2025.
In a promotional video for the film, Diaz admitted she was perfectly content living her daily life without making movies.
But when a friend calls and promises that the job will mostly consist of going to set and laughing for months, how do you say no?
You don't. And that highlights the difference in her approach now. She wasn't taking on a grueling, emotionally draining indie drama to chase an Oscar.
She didn't need to secure her legacy. She just wanted to have fun with a friend. It was low-stakes, high-enjoyment work.
Stay tuned and hit that subscribe button because the way she is managing these ongoing projects is a masterclass in leverage.
It really is. Once she broke the seal and realized she could successfully balance this new life with her old passion, she began taking on more projects.
But the hierarchy of her life remains rigidly fixed. A source explicitly noted that every single career decision is meticulously coordinated around her family life.
Work is secondary. Family is primary.
Her IMDb page is definitely lighting up again, but entirely with projects that seem fun and nostalgic.
Yeah, she starred in the 2026 Apple TV film Outcome alongside Keanu Reeves.
She's got a new Shrek sequel in the works where she's reprising the voice of Princess Fiona.
Which is brilliant because voiceover work is notoriously flexible.
And there is even an untitled Troop Beverly Hills sequel on the horizon. She is working, but she is working from a place of absolute leverage.
When you look at the entirety of this journey, from the frantic, flashbulb-heavy red carpets of the early 2000s to the quiet, highly guarded arrival of Little Nautas in 2026, it challenges a core assumption we make about success.
We operate under the assumption that once you reach the top of the mountain, your only job is to stay there.
You are supposed to aggressively defend your flag against everyone trying to take your spot.
Right, and she realized that standing on top of a mountain is exhausting, cold, and incredibly isolating.
Sometimes the bravest, most autonomous thing you can do is look at the view, hike back down, find a quiet valley, and plant a garden instead.
She fundamentally decentralized Hollywood from her identity.
She took back the reins of her own narrative. In a culture that demands we share everything, she found power in keeping the most important things entirely to herself.
Let's summarize the ground we've covered today. We took a massive stack of sources to track the radical evolution of Cameron Diaz.
We explored how she initiated an unprecedented 11-year hiatus at the absolute height of her fame.
We looked at the mechanics of how she and Benji Madden engineered a physical sanctuary in Montecito, removing themselves from the paparazzi ecosystem of Los Angeles.
And we examined how, on their own carefully chosen timeline, they welcomed Raddix, Cardinal, and now Nautas via surrogate.
Which redefines later-in-life motherhood and proves that non-traditional family timelines are becoming increasingly common.
Through it all, she proved that success doesn't have to look like relentless visibility. She became the architect of her own autonomy.
Proving that you don't have to play a game just because you happen to be winning it. Which leaves us with a final thought for you to chew on as you go about your day.
We spend so much of our lives running on the treadmill of expected milestones. We push for the next promotion, the next public achievement,
the next validation from our peers. But imagine for a second that you had the power to hit pause on a highly successful career right at its absolute peak.
If you had the resources and the opportunity to completely redesign your life from scratch, far away from everyone's expectations and timelines,
would you actually have the courage to walk away? And if you did, what would your personal Montecito look like?
Keep asking questions, keep challenging the expected timelines, and keep exploring the unknown.
You've been listening to Starscope Report, where Jordan and Jamie uncover the stories shaping Hollywood, music, and pop culture. Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that keep the stars shining.